you're a larger practice or multi-practice, getting that access to that data and centralizing it so that you can start doing cool things with it, like even just setting up a HIPAA compliant AI agent, you can connect it to that data and start asking it cool questions and business questions and seeing like, hey, what are some things that my best practices are doing that you can see from the data that maybe my other practices aren't doing? And what you'll find is AI can glean insights super quickly that you might not have seen or maybe would take you weeks to see as a regular analyst. I feel like dentistry would be so much further ahead if people could access the data quicker, because that's a big slowdown for a startup. They have to go find someone like us or Vlox or NextHealth to get access to that data, and it's just a pain.
I am so excited for today's episode, but before we can get into it with our guests, we've got to go to the Ask Ken segment. This question that came in is near and dear to my heart. We had somebody that basically said this: I'm afraid of my financial statements. Every month I fear the worst, like my business is going to completely fall apart. How can I overcome this? This is actually diagnosable. We have uncovered or discovered a challenge that a lot of people have, and it's called financial disassociation. And it's where you separate yourself either a great distance, and so you don't even look at or want to see your financial statements, or you get so overly involved that it just eats you alive. And again, it's called financial disassociation. The way that you break this is get a financial person on your team and force yourself to sit down on a monthly or weekly basis and force yourself to just sit there and listen and absorb and do it on an even keel. Don't swing too far one way or too far the other way. But when you put those patterns in place, the more you have the patterns and the more you follow the patterns, the more quickly you're going to overcome this. You're not going to be afraid anymore. You're not going to be scared anymore. And believe it or not, there are so many people out there. We see it all the time where people are just afraid and their identity gets wrapped up in, and especially if you're a doctor that's moving to being more of a leader in the practice as opposed to the day-to-day chairside doctor, this is where it really crops up. So, all right, I could go on forever on that one, but hopefully that gives you a little bit to work with. All right, now for today's episode, super thrilled. We have Jake and Clint with us. Guys, I'm going to let you just take a minute and introduce yourselves, and then we're going to jump right into the dental truth you want to attack.
Jake, you want to go first?
Your mute's on.
Oh, there we go.
Podcast.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt Ask Ken section there. So, Jake Larsen, a co-founder of Kolla with Clint. I've been in the dental industry for I don't even know how many years, since 2011 when I was one of the first head of sales at Weave. And that was a great experience. That's where both Clint and I both got our starts there. My claim to fame is that I started at Weave before Clint by probably a couple months.
Nice.
So anyway, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
My name's Clint. I was one of the co-founders of Weave. So been in the dental space now for 15 years coming up on, which is crazy to think about. And once you get into dental, it's hard to get out. But it's a good space to be. We love working in the dental space. We love working with dentists and office managers, and just have met so many great people in the industry. Now we're trying to build this new startup and really passionate about data and helping operators get access to that data.
Outstanding. Awesome. All right, guys, what's the big truth that you want to bring to light and you want to talk about today?
I was discussing this with Jake earlier today, and he guessed correctly what I wanted to talk about, and he said, because I talk about it all the time, probably till I'm blue in the face, and maybe Jake's getting sick of it, but he agreed to let me rant a little bit more here today. In this, people have been talking about data for a long time. This is not a new thing. They even had said, even a decade ago, that data was the new gold or new oil. And Google being the head of that, like really trying to get as much data as possible, even releasing free services like Gmail and YouTube and all these things just to get access to data. Well, that's only exponentially become more important in the age of AI, which is really interesting to think that the data has become even that much more valuable. And in the dental space, where AI can make a huge impact in the industry and really, really help offices and operators and doctors and diagnosis, the data is even more important ever in the dental industry than it ever has been. And I think that because of that, and practice management systems recognize that, the gatekeeping of that data and getting access to that data is harder and getting harder than it has ever been before, which is actually interesting. And so that's kind of the truth that we want to talk about today is like data, its importance, how to get access to it, who's the worst offenders at gatekeeping it. And, if you're a DSO or a larger dental organization, it's even more important to you to get access to data, because in those cases, some of the time they can afford to build their own tools in-house now with the way AI is going. And so you need that data to do it and train it. So that's kind of what we want to talk about.
Man, there is so much to unpack there. Maybe we could start with, so you talked about the importance of data. I think all of us can agree to that. We've all been in the seat of trying to run a business and trying to run a business blind, not knowing what's going on, not getting reports back, not having key things that you can look at is very, very difficult. So I think we're all on the same page when it comes to the importance of data. I'd like to dig into, you mentioned this idea of certain providers gatekeeping access to data. Let's say I'm a DSO. What would that look like for me? What roadblocks might I run into trying to get my data?
Oh, it's so interesting. We have a customer where we help them get access to data, and they have 15 different practice management systems. And so between that and other customers that we have, we understand how hard it is to get that data. And we've gotten data from almost every practice management system out there. So we're pretty aware of which ones are hard, which ones are easy. Let's start with one of the best, which historically has been the best, but Open Dental is running on a database that is an open source database, and you get credentials to it and you can get access to that data for free, which is awesome. Even though lately they're trying to lock it down even a little bit more, you still get free read access, but for like third-party tools and things like that, and they now have started billing customers to put data back into the system, which I find interesting. And then they closed their source, so they're not Open Dental anymore. They need to be called Closed Dental, but that's how it goes. They're still the easiest to get access to data even today. And then you've got the other on-premise systems, Eaglesoft and Dentrix. Both have tried to lock people out of the database as much as possible. We keep hearing rumors that Dentrix is even going to get even more aggressive on locking people out of their database. The thing that bothers me most about those two is their on-premise systems. And so the doctor or the owner of the practice buys the computer, they own the hardware, they're paying for the disk, they're paying for the internet, the memory, like all these things, they're managing their own security. And so they basically have all the liability, all the cost. And then Dentrix turns around and says, yeah, if you want to get access to that data that's on your box, you have to pay $2,000 developer program fee and $45 per location per month to access that data. And they're claiming it's security, but that's a bunch of bull because they don't have any liability on the on-premise server. And anyway, so they're the worst and most egregious offender on giving access to data. Charging for cloud access on Ascend, I can understand a little bit more, right? The cost that they're bearing to power that API does cost money. Now, do I think it's worth $45 a month? Absolutely not. We've seen Salesforce, HubSpot, all these major providers have open APIs that are significantly cheaper and they can handle it just fine. So I still think it's a little bit of a gouging game. But yeah, Dentrix is by far the worst offender on that. But you'll still see it with other cloud hosted providers. Denticon has a really, really expensive fee to access that data. Even if you're just doing a data warehouse and you want to get a copy of that data from Denticon, well, they just nightly will dump it. They charge the same amount or sometimes even more than the API access to just dump that out. And so, yeah, go ahead.
One thing you also failed to mention there is even when you do pay those fees, they will limit which data points they're actually going to make accessible to you.
Oh, geez. That's the other thing about that's
you
why
can pay for it.
Works.
And
if you use a
still
third
not
party
get
that goes directly to the database, you get access to all the data. If you pay for the developer program, you don't get access to all the data because they haven't exposed it all. And so it's like, oh, you want claims data? Like, sorry, you pay $45 a month, you don't get claims data. It's pretty egregious. Yeah, I hope that there's a lawsuit open with Viant and them right now, but I'm not going to hold my breath that it'll go to court. I'm sure they'll settle and Viant will pay money and whatever. It's when they come after us, maybe we'll suck it up and just spend all my life savings battling Dentrix on this. I don't know.
Well, wow, there's so much to unpack there too. Y'all are speaking my language. Maybe just for the sake of debate, let's start with those on-prem systems. And then I think we could tackle some of the challenges with the cloud-based systems. So I'm going to put myself in the shoes of a developer working on an on-prem software. What reason would I have? What justification would I have for trying to prevent people accessing the underlying database that stores all of the patient data? Probably the only thing I could think of that would come to mind is I'd be worried about the integrity of that database as well as the integrity of my software. I mean, just like with any software provider, if I'm shipping it, I'm worried about someone trying to decompile it, someone trying to reverse engineer it, someone trying to break it. And so I'm going to make it as secure as I can. And I'm going to make it a little bit difficult for someone to decompile or reverse engineer it, almost because they could hurt themselves in the process. Like, I'd hate for them not knowing what they're doing to ruin their patient database and not have a way to recover it. Like, that's one of the worst things that can happen to a dental practice. So maybe you could speak to that. If I'm a software provider and I'm worried about someone breaking their own software or just nuking their own patient database, so I'm going to put some protections in place.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is a legitimate concern for writing back to the database. But if you're just a dentist and you want access to read only, there's really not a way to corrupt the database from reading it. Like, yeah, you could read it too much and slow down the operations, but that's such an easy control that it's like, but yes, writing back 100%. If you just let someone directly access the database and start dumping in data, there absolutely is a risk of corruption. I think that's a legitimate concern. Do I still think it's worth $45 a month when they have literally zero marginal costs? No, especially since they already have stored procedures in their database for creating patients and transactions. All they have to do is expose it and it would work for people. But yes, your concern is super valid, especially for writebacks. Reading, not so much.
Yeah, so I almost wonder if that's what's fueling Open Dental's decision. Like, I'm looking at Open Dental and trying to picture, well, they've probably had at least a couple of situations where people have been doing unauthorized writebacks and they've totally borked the database. And so yeah, go for it.
But exchanging money to control that doesn't fix that, right? Like making someone pay
that's a good point.
Yeah, in the Dentrix case, not so much, just because it's they just give you database credentials and you have to use their database stored procedures. Open Dental at least created an API that has some controls around it. So that could be exactly what Open Dental's thinking. I also think, though, that they're charging $35 a month for writebacks. It's kind of like, really? Again, I'm running the system on my computer. It's $35. You're just giving me this piece of code anyway. But yeah,
and if you want to get to the truth of it, right? Because this is the Dental Truth Project. No vendor is just eating that cost.
No, it's all being passed through the doctor in some way.
It all gets passed through to the providers and the people that actually are having more money taken out of their own pocket because they're already paying for Dentrix, right? They're already paying for Open Dental. And now for every vendor, it's not just a single fee. Every vendor that's going to integrate and pay that $35 or $45 is now increasing the cost of their services by $35 and $45 or whatever it might be. And you multiply that by every vendor that's integrating with the practice management software. The truth of the matter is the people that are impacted by this the most secretly, because they don't know, right? They don't know that these are costs that are getting passed on to them, are the actual providers themselves, which is really unfortunate. And why Clint is so passionate about this is because it's a hidden revenue source for provider or software companies that they have zero margin on these things and make a lot of money from people that are already paying them lots of money for their services.
Well, the reason why it's hidden, Dallin and Ken, is because historically Dentrix's contract for the developer program requires that you can't charge an extra fee for Dentrix customers. So you basically have to just price it in for everybody, and you can't say like, we're raising our pricing because of Dentrix. You could say we pay integration fees or whatever. They don't want they want all the benefit and none of the blame. So it's kind of ridiculous.
Well, that makes sense. And I can see why passing that cost onto each individual vendor that wants to integrate compounds it for the practice, because it's different if you go to the practice and say, right now you're paying $500 a month for your practice management software. And if you want us to flip the switch that opens it up to APIs, then you pay $550 per month. And then anyone that wants to come in and get access can, then at least it's one single fixed cost for the practice, and they can choose if they want to flip that switch on or not. But by passing it on to the vendors, like you were saying, have to maintain their own margins. And so they're always going to pass it back to the practice. So then for the practice, that essentially the cost of their practice management software is jumping up for every single tool that they're trying to integrate, because everyone's passing that extra developer fee back to them, and that can get out of control really quickly.
Yeah. I keep flirting with the idea of creating a vendor management tool for practices where they can pay the developer fee one time, $45 a month to Dentrix, and then it syncs all the data to their own system. And then that system is what vendors will connect to. And they can say, hey, this vendor needs access to this, and this, and they only get access to this, and just gives full control to the practice. And they can see which vendors are accessing which data the most, how often they're hitting it. It'll log it all for HIPAA compliance if they're logging, if they're accessing PII, that type of stuff. I don't know if people would buy it though. It'd be cool just to have.
I mean, that's not too different from what Kolla is trying to do.
Yeah,
I could see that being a very natural outgrowth.
Extra layer on top of what Kolla is doing. But yeah, because we already sync the data, yeah, I could see what you're saying. It's just if we figure out how to do a vendor management tool on top of it, for sure.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, maybe let's speak to some of the cloud practice management softwares and the reasons why they would charge for access to data. And you had brought this up a little bit, but I'd love to hear more of your thoughts. It's one thing if the PMS is sitting on a local server, you own the data, you maintain the data, it's all on infrastructure that you've bought and that you keep up. But if I am a developer for a cloud practice management software and someone wants to open an API, that takes work. And if someone wants additional data endpoints, it takes work to expose those. If someone wants me to make a backup of all of their data and store it in a separate location, I have to pay for that cloud storage cost. I have to pay for the cloud computing cost. All of that, it costs money not only to develop, but it also costs money to maintain. So I could maybe see a little bit of justification there for charging money for those extra services to be set up, because there is a legitimate cost for the cloud PMS developer.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. There absolutely is a cost. There's a cost of building a developer program. There's a cost of maintaining a developer program. And not the least of, probably the most important and probably the costly, is managing the security portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're going to expose that data over the web through an API, they have to take the security very, very seriously. And that takes time and effort and cost. And so I don't begrudge the cloud providers charging to access that data. I totally get it. I think my issue there is just with the cost that they're doing. I feel like they're definitely trying to, this isn't this is a value-added service that they're trying to make a lot of money with. It's not necessarily just hey, here's a cool feature. Yes, we have some costs, so we're going to increase your price, because it costs to build any feature in a practice management system. Are they going to start nickel and diming you if we add this feature to the schedule? Should we charge you for it? It's going to take usage. It's going to add more storage. All those things are all true for any feature in the practice management system. But this one, they have a clear path to revenue. And so I think they're just taking it. We can charge the vendors access because they have no other way of getting that data. So they pick the price, they set it. And I don't think it has anything to do with what it costs them. I think it's just how much can we squeeze out of people.
Yeah. Very interesting. So maybe the question is, we're wrapping up, because again, the Dental Truth Project, we're not just trying to air out the dirty laundry, but we're trying to air out the dirty laundry for the purpose of making things better. So, Jake and Clint putting on their realist hats, not necessarily what should be, not necessarily what ought to be, but what do you think are things that we could do as an industry? What could DSOs do? What could vendors do? What are real actionable ideas that could make this situation better?
Yeah, I think Step one is realizing how important the data is. And then two is if you have a practice management system that charges to get access to the data, I don't know if you have any other option right now. You either have to pay it to get access to that data, or you have to switch practice management systems, which we all know is a nightmare, and your staff will complain for the next year at least. And it doesn't matter if you find something better. The change is hard for staff, and I totally get it. They know all the hotkeys, everything, and so it just slows efficiency down. So changing practice management system is hard. But especially if you're a larger practice or a multi-practice, getting that access to that data and centralizing it so that you can start doing cool things with it, like even just setting up a HIPAA compliant AI agent. You can do that like in Google now and some others where they keep everything on local infrastructure. So it's not like you're not shipping PII up to the cloud, or I guess it's your cloud. It's a isolated cloud. You can connect it to that data and start asking it cool questions and business questions and seeing like, hey, what are some things that my best practices are doing that you can see from the data that maybe my other practices aren't doing? And what you'll find is AI can glean insights super quickly that you might not have seen or maybe would take you weeks to see as a regular analyst. And so I think that's like step one is like getting access to your data, centralizing it, and then starting to do things with it. But that's just the tip of the iceberg with what you can do. You can start doing real cool things when it's not just practice management data, but if you start pulling in your marketing data, you start pulling in your communication data, your HR data, so you can like people clocking in, clocking out, and like how much production people are getting. That's like you can get real accurate data on how much production is happening while people are in the office. Like, are you overstaffed, understaffed? With marketing, you can track all the efficiency of your marketing campaigns, like how many leads came in, how much money came in from each campaign, because you can now you can tie in transactions from the practice management data, so how much money came from a lead to the campaign where that lead came from. Mm-hmm. Another one would be like communication. If you have access to the communication data, if you're using like a enterprise phone system or just a phone system that's not dental specific, you will get access to that data. Like if you're using what's one of the popular ones, Jake? My mind's blanking.
Like that's not dental specific?
Well, like Ring Central. Like if you're using a Ring Central, they have an API and you can get access to that data. You can get the transcripts. You can see everything. Hopefully Mango and Weave will start releasing that data soon. So, because they're so popular in the dental space. Currently, they don't have an API for it and you have to scrape it. But yeah, you can start tracking things like close rate on the phone because you have transcripts and you can see if they mention their phone number and it gets input to the system as a new patient, you tie that data together and you can build reports on close rate. So really like the power is in the data, and we're only seeing the beginning of what can be done. We do, because we help people integrate with the data, we get all these startups coming in. Jake probably does 3 to 4 demos for new AI startups in dental every week that are coming in. So every week, 4 to 5. And so there's just companies popping up everywhere trying to help the dental space. Obviously, a lot of them aren't going to make it or aren't going to have great products, but a lot will. And I'm excited for the future of dentistry. I think it's going to be amazing. But I feel like dentistry would be so much further ahead if people could access the data quicker, because that's a big slowdown for a startup. They have to go find someone like us or Vlox or NextHealth to get access to that data, and it's just a pain.
Well, thank you for that. Anything you'd want to say to wrap up? Any concluding thoughts, Jake?
You mentioned kind of like solving the problem, and Clint outlined that in lots of instances, the only answer is if you're not happy with how your PMS allows you to get data, that you switch PMSs. I think the other thing that you can do is just be vocal about it. Make sure that you and others that are in a similar situation recognize that this is a profit center for these software companies. And we don't believe that it necessarily should be, right? Because it's the data of the practice, and taking care of your customers should be supporting them in those efforts, trying to suck more money from them. So I think just one solution is just be vocal about it. Make sure that they know how you feel about it. Make sure that others using practice management software similar to what you're doing also are aware that these are hidden costs and things that the providers are fronting the bill for. So I mean, my closing thought is don't be quiet about it. Make sure that people know that they're taking extra money from you, and that we'd like to see some change in the industry about that. It's okay with the cloud-based ones. There are costs. People should pay some fees, but it, I think, is maybe a little bit out of control.
Thank you very much for coming on and helping to bring awareness of this.
That's it, guys. I loved listening to this back and forth. the power of the minds that be here. It was very enlightening. So thank you very much. That's it for today's episode of the Dental Truth Project. Thanks again to Jake and Clint for joining and sharing all of their insights. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We have a new episode that drops every Wednesday morning. I'm Ken Kaufman, and until next time, keep seeking the truth that helps dentistry thrive. Happy day.